Hey everybody, welcome back to Chris and Harry Unplugged. I'm Harry, and unfortunately, Chris could not be with us for this week's episode. He really wanted to be here. He really tried, but unfortunately, life just gets in the way sometimes. So, of course, he says hi to all of you. He says thank you for your amazing support and that he'll be here next week for the next episode. So basically what I'm saying is you're stuck here with me for this week's episode, but we have some really great stories that we're going to talk about this week from issue 1 in Ohio, which was a very big election. We have a story about a man, which you probably all heard about, a man in Utah who was shot dead by the FBI during a raid because he made some insane, deadly threats against President Biden and his life, along with other officials. We're also going to talk about Trump's new protective order in the election interference case and how it gives us a little bit of an insight as to how this case is going to go for Donald Trump and his team. And then I'm going to end the episode with a clip to show you folks, which not good. It actually made me pretty angry. I'm not going to lie, but wait till the end of the episode to see what clip I'm talking about. So before we jump into all of these stories, which I am so excited to talk to you folks about, I just wanted to say thank you again for all of your amazing support. Like, genuinely, I know how kind of tiring and depressing politics can be. So the fact that you are listening to us every week and following us on all our platforms, whether it be myself on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads even, or Chris on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads as well, Twitter, TikTok, Threads as well. We just want to say thank you so much for doing that. And, we really appreciate that. And also, before we jump in, I've been trying to start these episodes with a fun fact because some of these stories are a little bit morbid. So trying to start the episode off on a good note. So I just wanted to tell you guys that last night, I watched Interstellar. I've been telling everybody this. I told Chris this, and I described it as life-changing because it is. It's a fantastic movie, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Damon, Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, directed by Christopher Nolan. If you haven't seen it, oh my God, could not recommend it more. So that's my fun fact for the week. I watched Interstellar. Great movie. But anyway, aside from all that stuff, let's jump right into these stories and this week's episode. All right. I think we're going to start with issue 1 in Ohio. Now, this was a big election, and if you're not familiar with what issue 1 is, I'm here to describe it. Basically, in Ohio, this November, voters were going to vote on protecting their reproductive freedoms in their constitution, right? Ohio is one of 17 states that allows you to do that. Now, for the requirements to get this on the ballot, to try to amend their constitution to protect reproductive freedoms, people had to get signatures from 44 out of 88 counties in Ohio, and it would only take a simple majority to pass, so above 50%. Now, the overwhelming majority of Americans support reproductive freedoms. They want women to have the rights to choose what they want to do with their bodies and not have politicians or Republicans interfere with what goes on in their bedroom or their doctor's office, right? Republicans know this. And so with this vote in November, Republicans knew that it was not going to go well for them. So what do? They propose a resolution to change the way that constitutional amendments are passed in the state of Ohio. So instead, Republicans were proposing that you change it from getting signatures in 44 districts to 88, so all counties, all districts in the state of Ohio instead of just half. And it would also raise the threshold to pass amendments from a simple majority at 50% to over 60%. Now, this effort from Republicans, this resolution, was not to strengthen the democracy of Ohio. It wasn't to do anything like that. It wasn't positive. They were simply trying to pass this to make it almost impossible for reproductive freedoms to be protected in the Ohio state constitution this November. So they knew they were going to lose, and they tried to change the rules. Pretty scummy, right? I mean, let's just take a moment to recognize that. That's not democratic. That's not what the Republicans should be doing. I mean, you're elected officials. You're not meant to be pushing your ideology or what you think is best. You're not meant to be pushing, things that hurt your democracy. No, you're meant to be doing what's best for the people and what the people want, and let the people decide what they want, right? Republicans don't think like that, though. They wanted to make it harder for reproductive freedoms to be protected. And let me just put it this way. It did not go well for the Republican Party. This election backfired in a massive way on the Republicans. So, and I have the results here, and I'm going to read them to you. So, yes, which was to pass the resolution, change the way amendments to the Constitution are passed, got 43% of the vote. 43, ladies and gentlemen, which was 1,315,346 votes for yes. Now, for no, it got 57%. Yes got demolished, and that is 1,744,094 voters voting to protect their reproductive freedom, their ability to alter their constitution and strengthen their democracy. It's a big win for democracy. It's a big win for reproductive freedoms. I know I keep saying it, but it really is. And of course, President Biden issued a statement on this victory, and I'll read it to you as well. He said, today, Ohio voters rejected an effort by Republican lawmakers and special interest to change the state's constitutional amendment process. This measure was a blatant attempt to weaken voters' voices and further erode the freedom of women to make their own healthcare decisions. Ohioans spoke loud and clear, and tonight, democracy won. I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I really couldn't have said it better myself. I really do think that democracy won that night. Republicans, as we've seen in recent years, have been, trying to pass these anti-democratic measures, and this was no different. Of course, it was targeting abortion rights, but it's also just anti-democratic. They want to make it so that Republicans have more control over the state because it is a Republican state, but that's not how democracies work, and the people of Ohio disagreed. But, of course, this speaks to the larger issues that are coming up in the 2024 presidential election, that being the right to an abortion. Republicans will try to pass a national abortion ban. You had Republican presidential candidate Mike Pence endorsing the idea that it's not a state issue and that he would sign a national abortion ban. You even had RFK Jr. on the Democratic side, who's not obviously really a Democrat, saying that he would support an abortion ban for 3 months. After 3 months, you can't get it, which is only 12 weeks, right? It's significantly less than what Roe had it at. So you have these politicians, mostly on the Republican side, of course. Donald Trump as well has said he would sign, or, at least he's kind of danced around the topic, but he would obviously support a national abortion ban. So that's a big issue in 2024. And, this is just yet another rendition to how the Republicans are trying to restrict our rights, especially women's rights in this field. But thankfully, the voters spoke. The voters spoke. They want to protect their reproductive freedoms. And I think that this is a really bad sign for Republicans coming up in 2024. I mean, when you're losing elections like this in reliably red states like Ohio by, double-digit points, not good. Not good. And another big point about this election, and especially not good for the Republicans, is the fact that Gen Z showed the fuck up. Right? Excuse my language. I try not to swear, but I really mean it. Gen Z showed up, right? We had some early data, which might be off now because, obviously numbers change in Ohio and just elections generally. But we got some early data from the Ohio State University campus that said that 98% of voters were voting for no. They were voting to protect their democracy and their reproductive freedoms. Only 2% were voting for yes. So, look, young people showed up, the people showed up, voters showed up, and it was a great, great win for democracy. And I think that this should terrify the Republicans. If you can't win in these reliably red states, and you can't, and by the way, I also saw another thing, but I'm sorry, I keep bouncing all over the place, but every election that involved abortion has won since Roe v. Wade was overturned. That is insanely significant, and the Republicans continue with their abortion bans. They continue to try to take away women's rights, and they keep losing. So I think this election, as I was saying before I interrupted myself virtually, is that this is a really big election. It's a very big red alert for the Republicans to maybe, hey, stop trying to take away women's rights. But they won't, and that will very, very likely punish them come November 2024, which really, folks, is not that far away. It's kind of scary to think about, and I hope you guys are riled up, even though it's like a year and 3 months away. That's really just not that much time. But yeah, big win in Ohio, and thank you to everybody who in Ohio who voted. But let's jump to our next story because I just really wanted to talk on that because man, huge win. Let's talk about this man in Utah who was killed by the FBI. So this 75-year-old man named Craig Robertson, he was making these very disgusting threats towards President Biden and his life. Like, for example, I'll read some of these threats. And I will give a warning here. Some of these are very graphic. When President Biden was meant to be traveling to Utah, this man wrote on his Facebook page that he was cleaning the dust off the M24 sniper rifle. Welcome, buffoon in chief. Not good. And then in a post on Monday, Robertson wrote, "Hey FBI, you still monitoring my social media? Checking so I can be sure to have a loaded gun handy in case you drop by again." I mean, come on, right? Like, these are blatant threats towards the lives of not only President Biden, but federal agents, federal authorities. And, the FBI took action. And rightly so. And I'll read a couple more of the threats he made here. This one is especially gross. He wrote in a Facebook post, "In my dream," I mean, this is really hard to read, folks. This is really bad. "In my dream, I see Joe Biden's body in a dark corner of a DC parking garage with his head severed and lying in a huge puddle of blood." I mean, it's so grotesque. It's so disgusting. It's really just hard to read. And I'm sorry if I had to subject you to this, but it's part of the story, unfortunately. And then another one, the last one I'll read before we get into the meat of the story. He said, "Perhaps," on Facebook, "Utah will become famous this week as the place a sniper took out Biden the Marxist." So obviously, I mean, these are just really, really disgusting threats. And he's obviously threatening the life of President Biden. And federal authorities deemed that these threats were credible. They thought that there was a decent chance that this man, who, actually ended up having plenty of firearms in his possession, would take action against President Biden and try to take his life. So they went to his house. They were serving him a arrest warrant, I believe. And unfortunately, interpret as you will. Unfortunately or fortunately, because this guy was very dangerous, and he wasn't treating the FBI well when he got there, but he was shot. He was shot dead. The FBI agents were giving commands to him but then he eventually pointed a gun at them, which obviously led to him being shot dead. You can't point a gun at federal agents. That's why I say unfortunately or fortunately, because he would have most likely shot at these agents and tried to take their lives. So I'm sure that a lot of federal authorities that day had their lives saved because of the action from the FBI, which was just terrible how we got to the situation. But regardless, he was initially facing 3 federal charges, including threats against the president, as well as influencing, impeding, and retaliating against federal law enforcement officers by threat. So he was going to go to jail for a very long time, but one thing led to another. He pulled out a gun and tried to shoot federal authorities. So that's basically the gist. This guy also made threats against DA Alvin Bragg, who obviously indicted Donald Trump in New York. He made threats against Vice President Kamala Harris. But the main point here that I really want to talk about is the fact that he was a Trump supporter. He was a very extreme Trump supporter, obviously. I don't think that this guy represents the mainstream Trump supporter, but he was. He was a supporter of Donald Trump. And wanted to retaliate against people who tried to take action against Donald Trump or yada, 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 right? And I think this speaks to the extremism in the United States, right? Like, we have people who are so dedicated to supporting Donald Trump that they are willing to make threats against President Biden. They're willing to point guns at federal authorities to do so. And look, my view on this is that I really do think that Donald Trump is responsible for this extremism, this rise in extremism and tragic events like this. The fact that it even got to this point and this man had to have his life taken is truly tragic. But I think Donald Trump is partly responsible because he goes on social media. He writes, if they come for me, I'm coming for them. right? He calls these things witch hunts. He says that, no, I'm not just being indicted. You're being indicted too. He is trying to dangerously rile up his base. He's flirting with some of these civil war posts that are being made on Truth Social. He reposted one that said his supporters would be in a civil war state of mind if he were to be convicted on any of these charges. This is combining and leading to the moment we're in right now, where there is people who hang on to every word. They listen to every single word that Donald Trump says, and they subsequently take action, making threats, buying the firearms to do so, pointing guns at federal authorities. And, Trump supporters might bucket this idea. They might think I'm crazy, but I think that a lot of people who are independents, even looking at what we're seeing recently with Donald Trump and the rhetoric he's using and how it's gotten more violent, and how he insinuates things a lot, I think that it really led to an event like this. Donald Trump is willing to spread these conspiracy theories, which, as we know, will rile up the craziest of the crazy. They will rile up the far-right lunatics in this country, and he knows that. That's the thing, he knows that, right? Donald Trump knows that when he spreads these conspiracy theories, there are people in this country who listen to every single word he says. They believe every single word he says. And if they think that their country's threatened, if they think their family's threatened and things like that, they're going to take action because they're so brainwashed to believe Donald Trump. And it doesn't excuse the actions of the individual, because this guy was an awful human being for what he did. He is obviously responsible for his own actions. But to not, include Donald Trump and when we're talking about responsibility, I think is crazy. Now, I also wanted to connect this a little bit to, something that happened to me this week. If we're talking about extremism, I got a letter sent to my house from a crazy Trump supporter saying that they were going to destroy me, that they were going to come to my state soon, right? And I think I'm not going to make the argument that this person was influenced by Trump, although that I probably imagine that they were. I just think that events like this are happening way too frequently, way too often. I think not even close to other levels in United States history, and extremism's on the rise. And I think that the trends we're seeing are very, very concerning, especially with just this event in Utah, and myself obviously experiencing it personally. And I know you folks probably have some family members or people who you're just like, what is wrong with these people, right? What is wrong with them? So anyway, I just thought that story was crazy. I really, really just, it left me feeling very uneasy because just because I got that letter, which obviously is not on the same level, but I got that letter and then seeing this story in the news. And then also the fact of the matter is there's a lot of people out there like this guy, right? This is not the only Trump supporter to make threats towards President Biden or want something terrible to happen or think terrible things. And I don't know any other way to describe that other than a little scary. And a little overwhelming, I think. I think it's hard to, how do we tackle this issue of extremism? It's we just got to vote out MAGA. I always say it in my videos on TikTok. I'm like, we got to get rid of MAGA in 2024. That's one of the biggest points. Issues matter, of course. We got to vote on the issues. But I think that this anti-democratic, lunatic conspiracy movement, MAGA, has to be destroyed. It has to be voted out in 2024 in a big way. A message has to be sent saying this country doesn't stand with MAGA, and we certainly don't stand with lunatics like Mr. Robertson, right? Unfortunately, I did see some Trump supporters on social media. I won't put up their images. I won't even say their names because I don't think they deserve publicity. For defending this guy, but there were Trump supporters defending this guy, saying, why'd the FBI shoot him? I mean, this guy's like an old man, he couldn't walk, and all that is crap, right? It's BS. Just because you're old, doesn't mean that you don't get action taken against you. And I of course, I want to remind people that he pointed a gun. He pointed a gun at federal authorities. So, man, just really scary for our country, I think. Just really scary, and I know you guys feel that too. But anyway, I don't want to harp too much on this very kind of depressing story in the grand scheme of things. But I do want to talk about the protective order with Donald Trump, which is Wow, what a saga. I mean, I don't know if you folks have been keeping up with the protective order thing, but if you haven't, I can't wait to talk to you about it. So, yeah, basically, with Donald Trump's social media posts recently about the election interference case, right? He's been, attacking the judge, attacking Jack Smith, attacking prosecutors. This led to a protective order. This was mostly it came from Donald Trump's post saying, "If you're coming for me, I'm coming for you," which could be interpreted in a lot of ways. So after that, the DOJ filed a request with Judge Tanya Chutkan, who's been assigned to the election interference case. They filed for a protective order against Donald Trump in this case. Now, this protective order is pretty standard in similar cases. It's not like they are going out of their way to attack Donald Trump or anything like that, regardless of what Donald may claim. But protective order is pretty standard, and it was basically... The request is just basically making sure that Donald Trump doesn't improperly disseminate any information in this case that he shouldn't. I think we all know that Donald Trump has a very poor track record with keeping sensitive information actually secret. He's not very good at it. So the Department of Justice simply wanted to file a protective order to make sure that if he does that, there are consequences, and it kind of just dissuades the man because he is a man-child, so he does need these common sense things in place because, common sense isn't so common with Donald Trump. So anyway, Trump's team responded to that request. They cited President Biden's advertisement of him drinking out of a dark Brandon mug as an argument, saying that President Biden has mocked Trump for it. Obviously, their response to the protective order, just including that, shows you how poor it was. It wasn't going to go anywhere. So there was a hearing. And they had a hearing on the protective order. Trump's team was trying to make it as limited as possible, if at all, if they could get away with not having one. And of course, the Department of Justice was doing the right thing and trying to make sure that Donald Trump does not give out information that he shouldn't and just post it all over Truth Social. Now, this protective order hearing did not go well for Donald Trump and his team. It was so bad for them, and we have some quotes from the judge here that I think are pretty significant. There's only a couple, so I'll read them to you. One of the main things she said in response to Trump's lawyers saying that, his speech should be relatively unrestricted was, quote, "The fact that he's running a political campaign currently has to yield to the administration of justice. And if that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say in a political speech, that is just how it's going to have to be." And I think that's spot on, right? I think that's very well said. And Judge Tanya Chutkan has been very good in this case. She's been fantastic. She's doing her job very well. And it's the truth. Donald Trump doesn't get to use his political campaign, which we all know he's running so he can, pardon himself if he wins. He's not running to represent people. He's running to protect himself. But he can't use this campaign to, prevent the administration of justice. He cannot use this campaign to be held to a higher standard that, I'm running a political campaign, so my speech shouldn't be restricted. No, that's not how the law works. Judge Tanya Chutkan slapped him down saying, sorry, just because he can't say exactly what he wants to say, that's just the way it's going to be. That's how these criminal cases work. Donald Trump is a defendant now. He's not President Trump. He's Donald Trump. He's a criminal defendant. So that didn't go well. The initial arguments didn't go well. But then Donald Trump's lawyer put forward a hypothetical of Trump making a statement while debating his former vice president, Mike Pence, that overlapped with what's in discovery. So, they're saying like, oh, what if Donald Trump wants to debate Mike Pence on something that might be in this case? And again, another very bad argument, right? Just not good. Not good. I mean, I don't know what these lawyers are thinking. I don't know what their strategy is, but so far, very poor. The judge wasn't sold on these arguments. And she said, quote, "He is a criminal defendant. He is going to have constraints the same as any defendant. This case is going to proceed in a normal order." She then went on to say, "You are conflating what your client needs to do to defend himself and what he wants to do politically. And what your client does to defend himself has to happen in the courtroom, not on the internet." And man, when I saw this quote, I wanted to stand up and applaud. I mean, it's perfectly said. It's very well done. And it's holding Trump and his team accountable. It's saying that just because you're in this campaign doesn't mean you get held to a higher standard. And look, this is what it's been something I've been very passionate about, is that, we have to have similar standards of justice. We can't say, well, Donald Trump was a former president, so either he shouldn't be held accountable at all, or that if he is held accountable, it should be in a certain way, like, oh, maybe he should just be placed on house arrest if he's convicted at Mar-a-Lago and not go to prison. No. We have a system of justice in this country that does not discriminate based on who you are, or at least we hope that it doesn't. In many cases, I think there's a lot of evidence that it does on lower levels, but at least in the Department of Justice, you hope that Donald Trump will not be treated better just because he was a president of the United States. And that's what Judge Tanya Chutkan is saying here, that Trump can claim all he wants that he's running for president, he's former president. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all in this case. And your former title doesn't mean anything. And essentially what these quotes led to was a protective order being put in place, a very strong protective order, I'd say. That was obviously a loss for Donald Trump. The Trump team did get one thing granted to them, which was one request they had granted, which was that Trump can now review discovery material in this case without the presence of his lawyers. However, there are some very big restraints on that, such as he can't have a phone with him, he can't have a copying machine or anything like that, and any notes he takes must be given to the defense counsel, aka his lawyers, to make sure that he's not violating the protective order, which we will get into in a minute. So even the one thing they got was very restrictive, just because there's no strong arguments that his lawyers are making. But let's dive right into this protective order, because it really off the bat just goes very badly for Donald Trump and his team. So, Judge Tanya Chutkan in the protective order, it's only 5 pages, really makes her opinion very clear off the bat. She writes in paragraph 3, only paragraph 3, the defendant and defense counsel shall not disclose sensitive materials or their contents directly or indirectly to any person or entity other than persons employed to assist in the defense, persons who are interviewed as potential witnesses, counsel for potential witnesses, and other persons to whom the court may authorize. Potential witnesses and their counsel may be shown copies of sensitive materials as necessary to prepare the defense, but they may not retain copies without prior permission of the court. Now, this is a really important paragraph for a number of reasons, but mostly it's kind of keeping Donald Trump in check because, as I've said in the past, as we all know, is Donald Trump has a very hard time keeping his mouth shut about sensitive material. Just so bad at it, just awful at it. This kind of makes it clear that, hey, Donald, you're not just going to get away with anything. You're not just going to be able to give out, information to your buddies at Mar-a-Lago about this case and get away with it. As I mentioned earlier, the only thing they got granted is still pretty restrictive. And then, she continues. She says that, in paragraph 4, making it even worse for Trump and his team because we all know, Trump doesn't have the best intentions. Quote, the defendant, defense counsel, and authorized persons shall not copy or reproduce sensitive materials except to provide copies of sensitive materials for use in connection with this case by the defendant, defense counsel, and authorized persons. Such copies and reproductions shall be treated in the same manner as the original. And that's also very important because, Trump and his team would try to use some slimy loophole, but, now they can't. Now they're saying you can't even make a copy, and if you want to make a copy, you have to treat it as the original. And plus, they also stated in this protective order that if they were to give copies of these documents to other people, only the authorized people, then those people have to be given a copy of this protective order, and they have to sign it. So it's very they're doing their job essentially in making sure that Trump is not finding any loopholes or that there's anything for Trump to use and be like, I was fine, I was justified. Wrong, no, not happening. And then Judge I just can't speak right now. Judge Chutkan continues In paragraph 6, upon conclusion of all stages of this case, all sensitive materials and all copies made thereof shall be destroyed or returned to the United States unless otherwise ordered by the court. Again, Donald Trump, look. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of essence of the classified document case in here. And it's like, Donald Trump would make copies. He would make copies and keep them as souvenirs, as he claimed for the classified documents. But, the judge is saying, buddy, you can't do that. That's against the law. And now, hopefully, these are actually being enforced. And, Donald Trump's defense lawyers are, valiant enough, maybe. I don't know if valiant's the word to describe any Trump lawyer, to make sure that he's not doing this and not violating it. I need a drink of water. 1 second. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Good stuff so far by the judge. Again, no loopholes. I'm not really sensing anything that is, Trump could get away with. But there are some here's one really important part I wanted to talk about in paragraph 8, which is, defining what sensitive materials means, right? And there are, it goes through A to F, and it says A is materials containing personally identifying information as identified in Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 49.1, which is, trying to make sure that, with witnesses, for example, they are identified in discovery. Donald Trump will know who has flipped on him, who has testified, all that good stuff, right? He can't. That is classified as sensitive material, and he can't just give that out because obviously that could be interpreted as, well, not interpreted. It would be witness intimidation and witness tampering. Anyway, B says, Rule 6, materials including grand jury subpoena returns, witness testimony, and related exhibits presented to the grand jury. Pretty self-explanatory. Materials obtained through sealed search warrants. And then D is sealed orders obtained by the government's filter team related to this case. E is recording, and this is, okay, these last two ones are very important. E is recordings, transcripts, interview reports, and related exhibits of witness interviews. And then F is materials obtained from other governmental entities. So E touches on, witnesses directly. A was kind of vaguely referencing, witness information, but E is saying, sensitive material in this case is recordings, transcripts, interview reports, and related exhibits of witness interviews. That's saying directly, buddy, no witness tampering. And look, there's already been a little bit of it in this case. I'm not sure if it was enough to drag Donald Trump's ass back to D.C. and throw him in a cell, but we all know that recently, Donald Trump attacked former Vice President Mike Pence, calling him, quote, little Mike Pence on Truth Social, and then he referenced parts of the case. He referenced parts of the indictment, right? So he was calling him disgrace, saying that he's gone to the dark side, and that he's a bad guy, whatever. All this, Donald Trump garbage, right? But there's already been some of that. But anyway, it's making it a little bit more clear that, buddy, you can't just witness tamper. You can't just attack the witnesses. You can't do any of that garbage, right? Which is great. It's good. I'm glad that that's being kind of emphasized. But that's the protective order. That's the gist. Donald Trump is being restricted in this case, rightfully so. And if, Republicans are trying to claim that it's over restrictive, but this is pretty typical in cases like this. And of course, the unique nature of it requires unique circumstances. And Donald Trump's unique behavior also requires unique restrictions. He can't keep his mouth shut, so maybe this protective order will do that. But you never know with this man-child, this man-child who was president of the United States, which is still a very disgusting thought. But so far, so good. The case is not going well for Donald Trump. The judge is a no-nonsense judge. She's not this Judge Cannon in Florida who Trump appointed, who the American Bar Association declared unfit to serve. She wasn't qualified. This is no Judge Cannon. This is Judge Tanya Chutkan, ladies and gentlemen. So good in that case so far. And there's going to be more. There's hearing coming up. I think on the next hearing in this case is August 28th, barring Donald Trump doing anything stupid and attacking witnesses or something of the sorts, right? So I think the next hearing is August 28th. Don't quote me, but I believe that is when it is, and that'll be trial date. I think the trial date is meant to be set on August 28th, which is only 14 days away from now, 2 weeks from the Monday you are listening to this on. So good stuff in that case. I don't think there's any more updates as of now. It's obviously kind of moving somewhat slowly as cases like this do, but we have a trial date Actually, wait, I'm wrong. Jack Smith, I'm not wrong. Jack Smith requested a trial date of January 4th, 2024, but that's just a request. It's not the final trial date. My fault. I just had like a brain freeze for a moment. Jack Smith required a date, but it's not set. Requested a date. It's not set yet, though. And that date will be set on August 28th. Again, Trump and his team are going to try and push it back until after the 2024 presidential election. That makes no sense. There's no reason that it should happen after the election. It should happen ASAP. And Jack Smith and the Department of Justice is trying to make that happen, trying to allow for enough time and discovery that Trump and his team can't make a silly argument that there's not adequate time, and all that good stuff. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling here about this case, but as you can tell, I love the legal cases. They're some of my favorite things to talk about on my TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. It's some of my truly, it really does fascinate me. And maybe I'll do a self-plug. If you want to hear more about this case for me, go check out the TikTok, the Twitter, the Instagram, Harry J. Sisson on all platforms. Anyway, folks, let's get into the last thing for today. If you're still here listening to me blabber about all these things, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you so much, genuinely. So let's talk about the last thing. This isn't really a news story. It's more of like a segment as we do on this podcast, but man, I saw this clip from Sunday, August 13th. I believe it was Sunday, August 13th, which is technically the time I'm recording this. But this woman was meeting Donald Trump, among other, fans. They were meeting Donald Trump. I know the listeners won't be able to, so I'm going to try my best to describe it to you because you guys can't see it. But this woman was meeting Donald Trump among other Trump supporters. He was signing hats. He was kind of going along this line of his followers. And this one woman, while meeting Donald Trump, was sobbing, tears running down her face because she was so happy to meet Donald Trump. And man, it was, you know what? I'll just let you guys watch and then I'll give my thoughts after because it really did infuriate me. Take a look at the clip.
She is your biggest fan. She is, isn't she? Shoot Beth.
Oh my God, my name is Beth. Can you please make that? Oh my God.
Yeah, so I think the audio listeners probably got a pretty good idea of what was happening in that video, but if you're watching on YouTube, of course, you saw that this woman was sobbing. I mean, she was asking for her hat to be signed on Donald Trump's name. She was saying, we need you back, all this crap, right? And, my reaction to this video and the reason I'm showing it to you is that, man, I mean, we are just in such a weird point in American politics where, Donald Trump is the twice impeached, 3-time indicted, about to be fourth, maybe on the day you're watching this or the day after. Very likely it might be fourth. But as of now, 3-time indicted, disgraced former president who's a proven sexual abuser, fraud, liar, and cheat. That's who Donald Trump is. Awful person. And his cult loves him. His cult still loves him. They're crying when they meet him. They're asking him to sign hats for them. They're calling them biggest fans. I mean, it's hard to formulate thoughts with videos like this because it's like, what do we do as a country? How do we tackle this extremism? How do we tackle this brainwashing of so many Americans into believing that Donald Trump is the second coming of Christ, that he's the new Messiah? Right? This guy's awful. He's a terrible person. I mean, the things he did as president, outside of his presidency, I mean, he's facing over 600 years in prison, 78 felony charges, and people are crying meeting this guy. Look, the MAGA cult is still alive. It's still alive. It's still a thing. And even after all the things that Donald Trump has done, they still love him. They're claiming that they care, Donald Trump cares about them. Donald Trump couldn't care less about these people, right? I mean, let's just get one thing clear. Aside from the cult nature of it, Donald Trump could not care less about these people unless they're giving him money or helping him get into office so he's not spending the rest of his life in prison. He doesn't care about the average American. I don't know why these people think he does. He's never given any indication that he does. But these crazy Trump supporters, these delusional people, still think that somehow Donald Trump cares about them. He doesn't. He's running to save his ass, right? But it's just truly, truly crazy, and it really goes to show you that the MAGA cult is still here. You'll never see something like this with a Biden supporter, right? You won't see Biden supporters crying, meeting Joe Biden, saying, "Hey, I love you. I'm your biggest fan. You're my hero." And it's like, yeah, Joe Biden has done a lot of amazing things, and I was very happy to meet Joe Biden when I did, and I'm sure a lot of people will be too. But nobody is like that on the Biden side. Nobody's doing that, right? It's just so concerning. It really is just concerning, and I could talk about this all day. But you know, I just don't know what we do to combat the MAGA cult. I don't know how we change that people's like that mind. I don't think you can. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I really just don't think you can change people like that's mind. They're just too far gone. And that's why it's so important that in 2024, we beat MAGA, we beat Donald Trump, and all of these MAGA politicians in Congress as well. You know, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetz, the Lauren Boeberts. You know, Lauren Boebert, we're coming for your seat. Be on notice. Anyway, got to get rid of MAGA. But I just wanted to show you guys that video because it really did shock me. I mean, I know we know the MAGA cult is strong. It's strong meaning that it's still a thing. I wouldn't describe the people in the MAGA cult as strong. I wouldn't even describe the cult as a strong movement. But man, it's just so depressing seeing videos like that. So I thought I should show you folks that is the reality of our country. Sorry to end off on a bad note here, ladies and gentlemen, but listen, folks, if you're still watching, if you're still here with me, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode, for your support on all of our platforms, where you can find us, you know, Chris.Mowry, I believe, on TikTok, and then on Twitter, he's Chris D. Mowry. He says it better than I do. I can never get it straight. But myself, I'm Harry J. Sisson on every platform. So thank you guys for your support there. And of course, on this podcast, you guys are awesome, and we appreciate you more than you know. Truly more than you know. And I think that's going to wrap up the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it wasn't the same without Chris. He brings such a unique energy to the episodes. So really appreciate you guys being here. We will be back full force next week. And look, I really hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And I wish you happiness and health. All right, everybody. Talk soon. Peace.